The diplomatic breach. The holographic displays flickered in the command center of the UTS Harbinger, Earth's flagship diplomatic vessel. Commander Ilara Vale stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the transmission from Nexus Station. The ambient blue light cast shadows across her face, highlighting the thin scar that ran from her left temple to her jaw. A reminder of the last time she trusted the word of the hegemony. "They're ready for us, Commander," Lieutenant Cade Harper announced, his voice steady despite the tension. "The Council representatives have assembled." Vale nodded once, straightening the collar of her midnight blue uniform. "And our contingency measures?" "In place," Harper confirmed. "Though I still think this is a fool's errand. The hegemony hasn't honored a treaty in 50 years. "Maybe not," Vale agreed, "but we still have to try. Too many colonies are suffering under their blockades." The Harbinger glided toward the massive orbital platform that housed the Galactic Council chambers. Nexus Station hung like a jewel against the backdrop of stars, its crystalline architecture catching the light of the nearby binary suns. From a distance, it looked like a beacon of hope and civilization. Vale knew better. Inside the Great Hall, representatives from 12 spacefaring species arranged themselves in tiered seating. The air was thick with translation fields, creating a subtle distortion that made everything seem slightly out of focus. At the center of the chamber stood a circular platform, where speakers would present their case. Vale took her position, aware of the hundreds of eyes upon her, some curious, others hostile, most calculating. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. "I stand before you not just as an emissary of Earth, but as a voice for the colonies that have been caught in the crossfire of our conflicts. The United Terran Alliance proposes a new framework for cooperative existence." From the upper tier, Overseer Thrax of the hegemony shifted his massive form. 4 compound eyes narrowed as he leaned forward. "We've heard Earth's proposals before, Commander Vale. Your people speak of peace while arming our enemies." "We arm those who cannot defend themselves," Vale countered. "The outer colonies need protection." "They need order," interrupted Ambassador Lorne of the City Conclave, her translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that reflected her agitation. "Human interference has destabilized 3 sectors in the past decade alone." Vale kept her expression neutral. "Is it interference to provide medical supplies to plague victims? To offer agricultural technology to worlds facing famine? It is when those same worlds harbor terrorists," Thrax rumbled. The debate continued for hours, circling the same arguments that had defined human-alien relations for the past century. Vale presented evidence of hegemony aggression against neutral territories. The Council representatives dismissed her claims as fabrications or exaggerations. In the upper gallery, where lesser species and observers were permitted to watch, a thin figure in plain clothing took careful note of which delegates paid attention and which dismissed Vale outright. Rehan, Earth's intelligence operative, had spent 5 years building a network across Nexus Station. Today would determine whether that investment would bear fruit or become a funeral pyre. "Enough," declared Matriarch Senva of the Eldrethi Dominion, rising from her ornate chair. Her voice silenced the chamber. "The Council has heard sufficient testimony. Commander Vale, the Galactic Council acknowledges your proposal, but finds it ultimately unacceptable in its current form." Vale's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. "Matriarch, I urge the Council to reconsider." "You are dismissed, Commander," Thrax stated with cruel satisfaction. "Your vessel will be provided an escort to ensure your safe departure from Council space." Vale stood her ground. "Safe departure? Like the aid ships you intercepted in the Peridian Drift, or the colony transports that mysteriously vanished near your borders." Security drones descended from the ceiling, hovering menacingly near Vale. The message was clear: leave now or be removed. As Vela was escorted from the chamber, she caught the eye of a Silurian delegate in the 3rd tier, 3 pupils within a single eye contracting in a pattern that Vale recognized as their people's gesture of respect. She wasn't alone. Not everyone on the council supported the hegemony's dominance. Back aboard the Harbinger, Vale shed the diplomatic facade. "Status report," she demanded as she strode onto the bridge. "We've been assigned an escort of 3 hegemony warships," Harper reported. "They're maintaining position off our starboard bow." "And the Mercy Fleet. The UTS Compassion and UTS Benevolence are on schedule, about to exit faster than light travel at the coordinates for the Vega Colony relief mission," Communications Officer Lynn answered. "They're carrying enough supplies to sustain the settlement for 6 months." Vale nodded, her expression grim. "Send the coded alert. Something's wrong here. That escort isn't for our protection." "You think they're going to move against the relief ships?" Harper asked, already knowing the answer. "I'm certain of it," Vale replied. "The timing of this summit, the dismissal, the escort. They wanted us here, away from the supply route." The next 12 hours unfolded exactly as Vale had feared. The Harbinger was forced to take a circuitous route back toward Earth-controlled space, constantly monitored by the hegemony vessels. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the UTS Compassion emerged from FTL near the Vega Colony's orbit. Captain Mira Santos of the Compassion had just completed final approach calculations when her sensors officer shouted a warning. "Captain, multiple ships decloaking. Hegemony signatures. Broadcast our diplomatic status," Santos ordered. "Full shields, but weapons remain powered down. We're a humanitarian vessel on a sanctioned mission." The response came not as a communication, but as a barrage of energy weapons fire that tore through the Compassion's shields. The ship's hull ruptured, secondary explosions cascading through its structure as oxygen escaped into the vacuum. The UTS Benevolence, trailing behind, immediately began evasive maneuvers. "Captain," the communications officer aboard the Benevolence called out, "the Compassion is broadcasting an emergency message on all frequencies." The final transmission from the dying ship cut through the static, Captain Santos's voice calm despite the chaos around her. "This is Captain Mira Santos of the Earth vessel Compassion. We came in peace, carrying food and medicine. Remember what happened here. If this is how you answer peace, you will regret this war." The message repeated once before the Compassion exploded, debris scattering across the blackness of space. The Benevolence managed to jump to FTL before the hegemony vessels could target it, carrying news of the attack and the final warning. Back to Earth. The transmission spread across the galaxy faster than any official diplomatic channel could contain it. On remote mining outposts, refugees from the hegemony's expansion watched the footage in stunned silence. In trading hubs, merchants and smugglers shared the recording, the image of a humanitarian vessel in flames becoming a symbol overnight. If this is how you answer peace. In the war room beneath Mount Olympus on Mars, the emergency council convened. 12 men and women in military and civilian attire sat around a circular table, watching the transmission for the 5th time. "They've made their position clear," stated Admiral Chen, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. "The question is how we respond." Commander Vale stood at attention, having returned from Nexus Station just hours earlier. "We knew this was coming. The contingency plans are in place." General Marcus Donovan, head of Special Operations, nodded. "Operation Shadowfall is ready to activate. We've had assets in position for years, waiting for the signal." "A shadow war?" questioned Diplomatic Minister Rivera. "Is that really our only option? Perhaps another attempt at negotiation." "They blew up a medical ship," Vale interrupted, her voice cutting like steel. "There's nothing left to negotiate." President Amara Ellis, who had been silent until now, raised her hand. The room fell quiet. "The United Terran Alliance has extended every possible olive branch," she said, her tone measured but resolute. "We've tried diplomacy for a decade. We've allowed the hegemony to dictate terms while they strangled our colonies and murdered our citizens. No more." She turned to Donovan. "General, you have authorization to initiate Shadowfall. No formal declaration of war, no large fleet movements. We fight in the shadows, where they've been operating all along. And the public statement? Admiral Chen asked. Ellis looked at the frozen image of the Compassion in its final moments. We tell the truth. We came offering peace. They answered with fire. Now they'll answer to us. Within hours, encrypted signals pulsed through quantum relays to seemingly unconnected destinations across hegemony space. On the mining colony of Cirrus Primus, a foreman named Takashi Hiroshi received a short burst of data on a receiver he had kept hidden for 3 years. In the merchant quarter of New Damascus Station, shop owner Linda Nazari closed her store early, opened a hidden compartment beneath her floor, and removed a case she had never expected to use. Across a dozen worlds and stations, sleeper agents, some human, some alien allies, activated protocols that had been dormant for years. This wasn't an invasion force. It was an insurgency carefully cultivated and strategically positioned. The Shadow War had begun. The Shadow War begins. The hegemony outpost on Talos IV hummed with activity. 3 massive processing facilities extracted valuable minerals from the planet's crust, while hegemony overseers maintained strict control over the local population, mostly humans and Solarians who had been there before the annexation 5 years ago. Security Chief Dravkan stalked through the central monitoring station, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. Increase patrols in the eastern quarter, he ordered. Those human troublemakers have been too quiet lately. His lieutenant, a younger member of the Viziri species, bobbed his head in acknowledgement. Could be they had finally accepted their place, Chief. Dravkan made a sound between a laugh and a growl. Humans never accept anything. That's why they must be controlled. Neither noticed the maintenance worker adjusting an air filtration panel or the small device she attached to the internal circuitry. The Ling arrays had been working undercover at the facility for 18 months, waiting for activation. The signal had come 3 days ago. Elsewhere in the facility, in a secure communications room, a Silurian technician named Crow made a series of subtle adjustments to the outpost's defensive grid. Each change was minor, a millisecond delay here, a fractional power reduction there. Nothing that would trigger alerts but would compound into significant vulnerabilities. On the outskirts of the main settlement, in a crowded bar frequented by off-duty security personnel, a man named Javier Torres poured drinks with a steady hand and an easy smile. He had spent years learning the patterns of the guards, their rotations, their habits. Tonight, he added a mild sedative to the reserve liquor, just enough to ensure slower reactions when the time came. Commander Vale's shuttle landed without authorization in a narrow canyon 15 kilometers from the outpost. She wasn't supposed to be here. Generals didn't typically join the front lines, but Shadowfall was her creation, and she needed to see it work. Perimeter secure, reported Major Ash, leader of the small strike team that accompanied her. Our inside contacts confirm the preparations are complete. Vale nodded, checking her tactical display. Time to transmission. 90 seconds, Commander. Around the outpost, similar small teams were in position. Not an army, barely even a strike force. They didn't need numbers. They had preparation and precision. At exactly 200 local time, every communications device in the settlement, personal and official, received the same message. The recording of the Compassion's destruction, followed by Captain Santos' final words. As the hegemony officials scrambled to block the transmission, the first phase of the attack began. The outpost power grid fluctuated, defense systems cycling through an unexpected diagnostic mode triggered by Crow's modifications. Oxygen levels in the security barracks dropped just enough to induce mild disorientation among guards already affected by Taurus's sedative. When Vale's team breached the perimeter, they met minimal resistance. Strategic targets had been identified months in advance. Command centers, weapons depots, communication arrays. They moved with surgical precision, neutralizing threats without unnecessary casualties. Inside the main administrative building, Dravkan fought to understand what was happening. Reports flooded in from all sectors. Security systems failing, personnel unresponsive, explosions at key infrastructure points. "This is impossible," he snarled as Elena Reyes appeared in the doorway of his office, no longer wearing the maintenance uniform, but outfitted in tactical gear. "Not impossible," she said calmly. "Inevitable." The liberation of Talos IV took less than 3 hours. When the sun rose over the eastern horizon, the hegemony flag had been replaced with the symbol of the United Terran Alliance. Commander Vale stood in the central plaza, addressing the gathered colonists. "We didn't come to occupy," she told them. "We came to free you. This outpost now belongs to its people, all its people. The Alliance will provide support, but governance returns to local control." As news of Talos IV spread, the hegemony responded with predictable fury. They deployed warships to critical systems, increased security at major facilities, and demanded the Galactic Council condemn Earth's unprovoked aggression. But something unexpected happened. The Council hesitated. On Nexus Station, the Silurian delegation formally objected to the hegemony's characterization of events. Ambassador Lorne of the CD Conclave called for an independent investigation into the destruction of the Compassion. 3 minor species that had never before challenged the hegemony abstained from voting on sanctions against Earth. The cracks were spreading. In the chambers of the Eldrathi Dominion, Matriarch Senva studied reports from her intelligence network with growing concern. "The humans are fighting differently this time," she told her advisors. "No fleets, no declarations, no territory claims. They're igniting resistance movements on dozens of worlds simultaneously. Surely the hegemony can crush these insurgencies," her senior counselor suggested. "Perhaps," Senva conceded, "but at what cost? Every suppression action creates more martyrs, spreads more recordings like the Compassion. And there's something else." She activated a holographic display showing tactical data from across the sector. "The humans are targeting very specific facilities and supply lines. Look at the pattern." The counselor studied the display. "They're isolating the hegemony from its client states." "Precisely. They're not trying to defeat the hegemony militarily. They're dismantling its empire piece by piece, on a dozen worlds across 3 sectors." The pattern repeated. Small teams of Alliance operatives, working with local resistance fighters, struck at key infrastructure then faded away. Supply lines were disrupted. Communication networks compromised. Seeds of rebellion planted and nurtured. This wasn't war as the galaxy understood it. This was systemic destabilization, carefully orchestrated from the shadows. 6 weeks after the destruction of the Compassion, the hegemony launched a major offensive against the Vega colony, the original destination of the destroyed relief ships. They sent a battle group of 12 warships, determined to make an example of the settlement that had become the symbol of resistance. What they found instead was an abandoned colony and a waiting Alliance fleet. Admiral Chen had positioned her forces in the shadow of Vega's largest moon, power systems minimal to avoid detection. When the hegemony ships committed to their attack run, the Alliance vessels emerged from hiding, catching the enemy in a devastating crossfire. The Battle of Vega lasted less than 20 minutes. 8 hegemony ships destroyed, 3 captured, 1 escaped to carry news of the defeat. In the war room on Mars, President Ellis reviewed the reports with grim satisfaction. "The hegemony is requesting a ceasefire and direct negotiations," she announced to her advisors. "No intermediaries, no council oversight." "They're desperate," General Donovan observed. 3 of their client states have declared independence in the past week. Their supply chains are in shambles. "What are your orders, Madam President?" Vale asked. Ellis studied the tactical display, showing Alliance operations across the galaxy, small points of light pushing back the darkness. "We accept the meeting," she decided, "but we make our position absolutely clear." 3 days later, Commander Vale stood once more in a diplomatic chamber, this time aboard the neutral station of Artemis Point. Across the table sat Overseer Thrax, flanked by hegemony officials who looked significantly less confident than they had at Nexus Station. The United Terran Alliance is prepared to discuss terms, Vale stated, her voice carrying the weight of Earth's resolve. But understand this. The old order is finished. The colonies will have autonomy. Trade routes will be open to all. And the hegemony will withdraw from territories it has illegally occupied. You cannot dictate terms to us. Thrax protested, though his voice lacked conviction. The Council is changing, Vale interrupted. Even now, a coalition of independent worlds is calling for reforms. Your empire is crumbling, Overseer. You can be part of what comes next, or you can be buried beneath it. She leaned forward, her expression unyielding. We came offering peace. You answered with fire. Now you understand the consequences. As Vale spoke, across the galaxy, the recording of the Compassion's final moments played one more time in the Great Hall of Nexus Station. Delegates from 27 species watched in silence as Captain Santos' voice echoed through the chamber. If this is how you answer peace, you will regret this war. The hegemony representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had believed their power absolute, their control unassailable. They had dismissed humanity as just another species to be managed and contained. They had been wrong. As negotiations began in earnest, one fact became increasingly clear to all parties. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had not conquered through overwhelming force or technological superiority. They had won by lighting fires of resistance across 1,000 worlds, by turning the hegemony's subjects into its greatest threat. The Shadow War was ending. A new era of peace, genuine peace, built on equality rather than dominance, was about to begin. And the price had been paid.